Spray slammed the promenade and blew sideways into the dark, and the ship answered with a slow, stubborn lean that didn't spring back. Crockery rattled behind a bulkhead. A lamp traced a long arc. Passengers widened their stances and waited for the roll to end. It didn't. A minute stretched to 2, then more, and the deck kept that slant like it had decided a new idea of level. Voices thinned to a hush before rising in the same worried question that travels any ship in bad weather. Why isn't she coming up right? The name painted on her stern was Waratah, a blue anchor line steamer built at Glasgow for the long trade between Britain and Australia. She was new, handsome, and hard-working. Passenger spaces wrapped around big holds built to swallow wool, hides, metals, and general cargo. The company called her an improvement on a successful earlier steamer, the Geelong, and from the quay she did look like a confident next step. Fuller upperworks, long promenades, more cabins stacked above a deep belly of freight. On paper, it all balanced. In a seaway, it sometimes felt different. From her first run, people talked about the way she sat on the water. Some liked the long, gentle roll. Others, especially the sort who notice angles without thinking, said she didn't so much roll as settle on a heel and stay there. Bath water ran to one side and wouldn't drain. Chairs drifted until they bumped a combing and stayed put. Seasoned travelers used the word tender, meaning a ship that felt slow to recover, especially when light or carrying weight high. Those were impressions, not calculations, but impressions shape choices. When a ship keeps the kind of list that makes a hallway look wrong, your body remembers. Her first season was busy. The route angled down the Atlantic, called at Cape ports, ran under Africa, and then east across the Southern Ocean. That's a mean piece of water on a good day. Current and wind can meet and turn long swells steep and angry, and a wrong-timed sea throws a ship on her beam ends before anyone can shout. Still, liners made that run every month. Waratah's crew was professional and her master experienced. The cargo plan on paper was legal, the accommodations sold out, the company's faith in their new flagship very public. On a July night in 1909, Waratah cleared Durban for Cape Town with more than 200 souls aboard. The coast there is no friend. The Agulhas current presses hard along the edge, and when winter weather blows against it, the sea stacks into short, breaking hills. Another steamer at dusk reported a liner pushing into heavy weather near the Mbashe River, smoke flattened by wind, then fading into the murk. That was the last credible sighting. Waratah did not reach Cape Town. No wireless call, no debris anyone could prove. She was there, and then she wasn't. The search that followed covered miles of cruel water. Tugs and naval cruisers beat up and down the wild coast, their own decks streaming, their crews fighting the same seas. Families waited on breakwaters and watched empty horizons. Rumors filled the gap where facts stopped. There were lifebuoys found that came to nothing, islands scanned for survivors who were never there, and stories that changed in the telling. What did not change was the silence. No one cited wreckage that could be nailed to her with certainty, and without wreckage, the talk turned to how she had behaved. Back in London, the Board of Trade opened an inquiry and started fitting testimony together like bulkheads. It read like two portraits laid over one another. One painted a ship that was stubborn on a heel, a ship that demanded ballast when her holds were light, and held a list longer than nerves liked even when they were full. The other painted a ship that was steady when properly trimmed, no different from a dozen contemporaries that traded safely for years. Both portraits were drawn by honest witnesses. The differences came from when and how they had known her. In harbor, at the end of loading, in a cross sea, or on a quiet passage with a fair wind. Numbers crept in. Centers of gravity, metacentric heights, the relationship between quick writing and slow, comfortable roll. People who had never said the word metacenter before learned that a ship can be legal and still have narrow margins in certain trims. Waratah had more top weight in her upper works than her near sister, which helped sell tickets, but could make her more sensitive if something shoved her over in a beam sea. Her cargo plan on that last leg reportedly included dense concentrates in with the general freight, lawful and normal for the trade, but unforgiving if anything shifted. None of that proved a cause. All of it sketched ways a bad minute could turn final. Comparison with Geelong hovered over the room. The company had pointed to that lineage when they sold Waratah as an improved ship, and the public took comfort from it. But near sisters aren't twins. A deckhouse added here, a promenade extended there, a funnel casing heavier than its predecessor, and suddenly a ship that looks the same stands up to sea pressure a little differently. In friendly water, the difference is a quirk you joke about over coffee. In an ugly train of waves quartering across the bow, the difference can decide whether a heel is a scare or the start of a capsize. Witnesses kept circling back to the Gothic list, the eerie, stage-set tilt that made corridors feel crooked. It had spooked people on earlier runs. Others insisted it was no more than the long, slow roll of a comfortable ship. The inquiry weighed both and came to the only honest conclusion the evidence allowed. Heavy weather, a ship reported off a bad stretch of coast, no survivors, no conclusive wreckage, and a record of behavior that worried some and reassured others. There was no single bolt to blame. There was, plainly, a narrow safety margin if a sea struck wrong and a load shifted at the worst possible moment. Commercial reality answered faster than the law. Public confidence broke. The Blue Anchor Line, bleeding trust it could not buy back, sold out within a year. Sailors took away a rough rule that outlived the company. A ship that feels easy can be hiding a slow righting moment that steals time just when you need it. Time is everything when a boarding sea knocks a ship down. If she's still choosing her balance point while the next wave comes in, you're in trouble. People went looking for a pattern in the family of ships. Some reached for words like curse. The straighter truth sits lower to the deck, fine margins, small redesigns, and the way the Southern Ocean exposes every weakness. Add in winter wind against a hard current, and the sea grows the kind of short, breaking walls that flip small steamers and humble big ones. If a hatch isn't dogged, if a ventilator takes green water, if a pallet shifts in the moment a heel is deepest, the ocean will take the invitation without asking twice. Years turned to decades. Wreck hunters drew grids, towed side scan, and announced candidates that dissolved under closer work. The shelf off that coast is littered and restless. Sand moves. Storms rearrange what the bottom shows. Steel sinks into softness and disappears a few feet down, and a century of corrosion quiets whatever shape remains. Without a hull, arguments live forever. People return to the old testimonies and pick a side. Was she fine and unlucky, or was she walking a tightrope her owners wouldn't admit? All the tidy endings fail the families who waited on the jetties and read the lists the next morning. They wanted bodies recovered, funerals, stones with names. They got an inquiry that admitted the obvious. No one knew the last minutes, and a set of lessons mariners hate to relearn. Trim isn't paperwork, it's survival. Cargo plans aren't just numbers, they are the way a ship's heart is arranged under a storm. A design that adds passenger weight high above the main deck asks ballast and discipline down low every time the weather sharpens. What remains are the images people carried off those earlier runs. A hallway at a slant that lasted too long, bathwater that wouldn't find the drain, a promenade where the horizon stayed crooked while the china hummed. Those are fragments, but they are real. Put them on a winter night off the wild coast, add a beam sea born from wind and current arguing over the same ground, and it doesn't take witchcraft to imagine the small chain, a long heel, a shift, green water in the wrong place, a second sea hitting before the first one's damage is understood, and a ship that does not come back. There's no poetry in the silence that followed, only a chart line that stops somewhere south of the Mbashe and an ocean that refuses to give up its proof. If a bell lies down there, it lies quiet. If the nameplate is buried, it sleeps under a skin of sand that moves with every winter. What can be said with the authority the water allows is simple. Waratah behaved in ways that worried serious people. She entered one of the world's most deceptive stretches of sea in winter, and in a minute, measured by 2 waves and a bad angle, margin became verdict. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.